It is Wednesday, July 9th, 2025. I want to talk you guys through my top 5 current stock picks that I am analyzing, and all 5 of these are positions I currently have on. We'll talk through each one of those, why I think that these are ready to break out. We're going to also look at the commitment of traders, talk through what this is showing us in the markets as far as positioning. So, where are people positioned in the market, and what side do we actually want to be on for these particular trades? And then I want to talk through my momentum system that actually picked up our copper trade. And if you're familiar with the Trump tariff news as of yesterday, there was a tariff placed on copper, to my knowledge, that increased the price of copper futures by about 10%, which is a massive, massive move. One of those that we were already in on from a momentum perspective, so we'll talk through that as well. So, first thing I want to highlight here is our top 5 stock picks. And the first one we are going to start with is Merck. And the interesting part here, we're actually going to highlight 2, but really 3 healthcare stocks. And healthcare has been really beaten up. So one thing I'd like to highlight here, are really 2 key important things when trading stocks. One is positioning, and the other is sentiment. So if we think about positioning, we want to know, when are retail and kind of big money starting to shift and get into certain stocks. So with the commitment of traders, what we typically look at is when they're crowded to one side. So for instance, they've been shorting a stock all the way to max crowded levels. We probably want to get long inside with the commercials. But really, the inverse is also true. We're not just siding with the commercials and going against the large specs. What we're actually trying to do is front run their position. When you think about stocks and you think about commodities, those prices are really not going to move until big money and big institutions start putting money and buying, or whether it be buying or selling, depending on the direction you're going. That's really what's going to drive the movement in the market. So if we want to be long a position, ideally we want to be catching when large speculators are max short before they pivot to going long. So when those guys pivot to going long and hedge funds and money managers start buying a stock, we want to be on the other side, right? We want to already have been buying before those guys even start. So that's sort of the positioning play. We want to be on the opposite position. We want to basically beat out the hedge funds and money managers. We want to be going in that direction before they do. The other is sentiment. So when we talk about 3 of these 5, and I'll actually highlight these 3 first, these 3 healthcare companies and healthcare stocks, if you listen to sentiment right now in the healthcare industry, it's not good, right? When you look at companies like Merck, Moderna, Pfizer, Walgreens, a lot of these companies are really beaten down, right? We look at the RFK Jr. and we look into politics and the things going on as far as vaccines and changes in healthcare policies. And I think we've had a number of doctors that are now suing RFK based on, I'm not going to get into a political conversation here, but what I want to highlight is sentiment is not good for healthcare. And so to us, we want to fade sentiment. So if sentiment has gotten completely to one side, right? Healthcare is bad, everything's going to zero, and the positioning as well, right? I mean, all these large speculators have been selling and selling and selling, right? I mean, look at this chart here on Merck, just driving this thing down. I mean, let's talk about the moves from low to high here for a second. Since May of 2024, we are down since the highs, probably around here, highs to lows, we're down 43%. Right now, we're currently down about 35% on this stock. And stocks are at all time highs again. Healthcare is not caught up. So sentiment's bad, positioning is negative. Positioning is short. So what are we doing? We're looking for opportunities here where positioning has now started to change, right? Positioning is now catching momentum. So we're looking at actually a momentum indicator here that I've become more familiar with lately. And this main chart is the daily momentum indicator. This is an oscillator, so when it's green, it is showing that there is big money that is starting to buy this stock. And this is sort of the trend line for this. So trend is actually moving positively. This one's the weekly. So we're looking at the same data for the oscillator, but on a weekly time frame. And then this one is for a monthly. And on a monthly time frame, we really want to be doing, if we're not green, is making higher lows. Weekly, we want to be seeing strong pressure to the buy side week after week. And daily, we'd really like, in order for triggering a long position, we'd really like to see this thing going green and maintaining green. And just from basic technical analysis here, I mean, I've drawn a trend line here. We're actually starting to break out on Merck. So to me, all the signals have indicated, right, with mass sentiment being very negative, with positioning having a 45% move down and still being 35% off the highs, and then with our momentum oscillator actually triggering a buy here with a breakout of a trend line, these are all reasons for me to be going long a stock like Merck. I think Merck is a great company. It's a great brand. If we look into, and I won't go too much into this, but if we actually go to Merck earnings in TradingView, I don't know how to quickly navigate to this, so I'm just going to go by Google to get to this section. Earnings are positive. Earnings have been beats quarter after quarter after quarter since 2022 on both, what is this, on revenue and on earnings per share, right? I mean, we're beating earnings, EPS, and revenue. This is a great company. Why is this company trading down 45%? Well, again, sentiment and positioning. That's what matters, and we're starting to see a breakout. So Merck is one of my top 5 right here. You can really, I don't think you're going to go wrong if you go with Merck, if you go with Pfizer. Very similar charts. I'm not going to talk about Pfizer today. We're going to cover Merck. The next one we're going to cover is Moderna. Same thing. Sentiment is bad, healthcare. It's actually showing a higher, now positive value on the monthly oscillator. The weekly is making week over week is going higher, and the daily is also high. That triggers a long for us. So our entry criteria is all 3 of these being green for the oscillator or higher lows on the monthly. So we've got a breakout here of a trend line. Moderna to me is looking very good. And again, if we want to look through, and I don't know if that's on, yeah, let's do TradingView Moderna earnings. Just take a quick look here. So really hit or miss, 22 to 23. Q4 24 was not as good, but they beat on revenue. They've beat on revenue again in Q1. They beat by about 20% on Q1. I mean, these are pretty good earnings, guys. I mean, I understand EPS here has gone pretty negative for Moderna. The reported has been improving, right? I mean, we've gone from -9, -3, -3, -2.9, -2.5. The earnings per share here is improving on Moderna. Revenues, man, I'd have to look a lot more into this. Those revenues are chopping all over the place, and I'm not actually sure why. There's got to be some sort of rhyme or reason why there's 1.8 billion in Q3 versus Q1 here. But all in all, we are seeing some surprise beats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of the last 6 quarters, we've had a beat on earnings per share, and we've had a beat on 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 in a row quarterly revenue estimates. So Moderna is another one. This is a great stock. I'd be buying this. I'm actually in a position. And the other being Walgreens. And Walgreens, I think, is also a good buy here. We're seeing a bit of a breakout of this sort of consolidating triangle pattern here. We've retested sort of our market bias, which is this green and red. We've kind of retested the market bias. We've maintained green and we've bounced off of it. This is looking good if we can really get past kind of this 11.9 level. And again, everything's set up here. Monthly's good, weekly's good, and daily for momentum. I also like Walgreens, and I'm going to just do a quick earnings review for Walgreens as well. For the past quarters have all been nice beats on earnings per share. Revenue has been a beat for as long as we can really go back here, all the way back to 2021. Really good company. That's another one on the top 5. So Merck, Moderna, Walgreens. Now we're going to look at MicroStrategy, which is attempting a breakout. Bitcoin has just made all-time highs, and you can really think about MicroStrategy as a levered Bitcoin ETF in a sense, because they've loaded up a bunch of Bitcoin on their balance sheet. So again, look at the monthly. We're in green for the oscillator. Weekly's green. The daily's green. This is triggering along. And I want to show you from the strategy perspective here, if we can load in the strategy, which should already have been loaded in, let's just pull up our strategy. With Moderna, let's just see if this is going to load. I would hope it's going to load for the sake of this video. If not, not a big deal. Just wanted to show you guys the back-tested results on this strategy. Let's see if I can quickly refresh it. If not, we'll just move on. If we go back to MicroStrategy and we go Strategy Tester, here we go. Every time this is triggered along, we have a 60% win rate and about a 5 times win to loss ratio. So if you win, which is 60% of the time, you're making 5x what you're risking. So that's a pretty good odds here in our favor. Bitcoin did just make an all-time high, so I think this could be a good runner. We're going to find out probably over the next couple of days if Bitcoin is going to fail and reject off of the new high or if it's going to continue to go. I'm going to just go back and very quickly test with Moderna, which is also looks like 60% with 2.7x win to loss. Merck, if we go on Merck and we do the strategy back test, we've got a 44% win rate, but a 3x winners versus losers. Walgreens improved significantly. It's a 50-50 with a 7.8x winners versus losers. The other position I'm going to highlight is Apple, which Apple's just been so beaten up. And again, this China sentiment has been very, very negative. Apple's a great company. We're starting to see everything except the monthly is set up here, but I've been buying in kind of this institutional buying zone after the major pullback. I was in just under 200 here in this institutional buying and smart money zone. This thing looks good, man. I think if we can really test, I mean, there's probably some key resistance somewhere around 222 if we can get to that level. And then there's some sort of minor resistance that we're starting to break out of here. Let's see. I mean, again, sentiment very bad. Positioning starting to look good here with momentum picking up. Apple is my number 4. Sorry, that's my number 5 because we just covered MicroStrategy, and then the backtesting results on Apple is also looking pretty good at 50% with a 2.25. So again, we're not going to win every trade here. We're not going to be right every single time, but if we can have the odds on our side, we're going to take these trades, we're going to lose some, and the ones that we win, they're going to run a lot further. So that's the top 5 stock picks that we have covered here. I want to talk through positioning now and what we're seeing in the markets. And as far as commitment to traders data for currencies, we've seen, and this is credit to crowdedmarketreport.com and Jason Shapiro and his group, so check them out if you're interested in this or understanding a little bit more of positioning. But when we look at the red, we're looking at going in the direction of the commercials and fading the speculators. So getting on the side of the commercials, and when big money starts to move in that direction, that's when we plan to get out once they get to sort of a neutral standpoint. So what are we seeing here? What we're seeing is the dollar has been overly beaten up, and also from a sentiment standpoint, the dollar has been very negative. So buying the dollar could be an interesting opportunity here. Again, this has no indication of timing, but more of the velocity of the move. When the move does take place, the dollar could have a very dramatic move up if we do start to catch a bid. I'm in short yen, which is very similar to long dollar. So short yen, we're looking at pretty good positioning here where the commercials are, or at one point we're max short, and then the large and small speculators, large speculators being more money managers, hedge funds, and small specs being more like retail traders, and commercials are technically like banks and places that are hedging their bets. So again, we want to side with the red bar, the commercials. The yen, I am short. We are currently pretty well in the money on that. The other sentiment I want to point out is equities are a little bit mixed here. So it looks like NASDAQ's getting close to a short. And when we backtest this, we actually only look at commercials in this instance when we look at equities. So we're only looking at the red bar. So if red is max long, we go long. If red is max short, we go short. So NASDAQ's looking pretty close to a short, whereas the Russell is actually a long, which is interesting because we've seen sort of this, again, sentiment in the market. AI, all these big, NASDAQ top 10, top 20, top 50 companies, and this AI revolution. We've seen a lot of that, as a positive market bias, and we've not heard a whole lot about the small caps. And that's what the Russell is, and that's what we're seeing in positioning, is that it may be time to rotate into the Russell. And we've actually seen the Russell start to pop and outperform some of these markets more recently. And then the other section I'll point out is the softs. So we're actually seeing a setup in coffee, or sorry, cocoa, and then potentially coffee. It's close, and sugar. And funny enough, sugar is actually looking like it is attempting a breakout, and it may be a position that I'll take on in the next day or two. So that's what we're looking at from a positioning standpoint. And then last thing I want to highlight is our momentum strategy, and one thing that it caught this past week. So if you look back on here, this is a momentum strategy that I've built out and back tested. Copper over the past 5 years has performed at about a 39% win rate, but when we win, it's about a 3.6x winners versus the losers, so it's a very profitable strategy. And over the past year, we've actually, if we look at 2025 specifically, we've actually caught some decent bids here. So we had kind of a break even. We had a nice little win on a momentum buy of copper here. And then we were gone from February until about May. We didn't get any opportunities or signals to go long. And then we caught a signal to go long in May. And again, broke even. And then what happens here? We got a buy signal. We had the tariff news. And that ripped copper back to highs and breaking out of a channel here. Not sure if we're going to be able to test and break beyond this. I've actually closed the position in that exit liquidity, but these were nice buys for me, and I actually don't even know if I sold when it crossed here, because it was such a temporary cross of the moving averages, which is what I use for this strategy, that I actually think I bought somewhere around here on a minor dip around 4.83 or 4.9, and we ended up getting out somewhere around 5.25. There were actually two separate trades that I took. Got in, got out on a profit, got back in, and then got out on this massive rip of a candle. So that momentum strategy has been very profitable with copper this year. There's not a whole lot else that it's been triggering when we look at things like gold. I mean, there's just lately gold's been kind of sideways chopping here. If we look at the just trend of the chart, I mean, we've been kind of stuck in this price pattern for at least a little bit of time here, so we'll have to see. It looks like a bull flag, but we'll kind of find out what happens there. And then Bitcoin actually triggered right before the new all-time high, or at least I believe it was a new all-time high versus the US dollar, so it might not actually be on this chart as an all-time high, but yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at there. But yeah, hopefully you guys found that helpful. I'm going to drop this in the Discord with the top 5 stocks and their current prices today. We'll talk through them again probably over the next couple of months, and we will see how those stocks perform versus the rest of the S&P 500. So thanks for listening. Hope this was helpful, and we'll talk again soon. Take care.